Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello guys, today we will talk about the new topic which called the main principles of heredity. Okay, we know each person from us have many traits. Maybe these traits inherited from parents, like for example color of eye, color of skin, color of hair, and also blood group, and so on. Okay, and also there are other types of traits which person gains these traits from environment, from his experience, and it is considered not traits in body, no, but considered skills, like for example ability of reading, drive a car, for example play a music, and so on. Okay, so by this way we have two types of traits. First one called hereditary traits, and number two called what? Acquired traits. Hereditary trait which are transmitted or transferred from generation to another. Okay, from grandpa to parents and offspring. Okay, and other type of trait not transmitted from one generation to another. Okay, again, so each person have two types of traits. Number one hereditary trait, and number two acquired trait. Okay, in this lesson we will talk about or will study by all details the first type of traits which called hereditary trait. Like we said, hereditary trait comes from what? These traits comes from parents, and the parents gain these traits from grandpa and grandma, and so on. So these traits transfer from generation to another. But question now, how the person inherited this trait from mother or father? If you remember in middle two we studied there are gametes, or there are 6 cells. The 6 cells like what? Sperm in male and ova in female. Okay, sperm or ova, the both of them contains what? Contains the hereditary traits of person. Okay, so during sexual reproduction, what happened fusion between what? Between sperm, which considered male gametes, and with ova, which considered female gametes, and during this fusion or fertilization make what? Form zygote. The zygote is considered what? The first cell in embryo or baby. Okay, so by this way this baby or embryo gains his traits from what? From not parent, no, from two, the mother and father. So if I ask you, hereditary traits are transmitted from parents to offspring by what? By what? By gametes or through gametes, طبعا during what? During sexual reproduction. Okay, and these gametes, like we said, what? Sperm or ova. Sperm in male and ova in female. Okay, now we will know how the traits transfer from generation to another. Okay, if baby or if your body inherited or gained any trait, this trait gained or transfer from generation to another, not from mother like we said before, no, from mother and father, as a form of what? As a form of gene. So for example, if you inherited, for example, color of eye, okay, you inherited gene from mother, gene for what? Gene for color of eye, and also you inherited other gene from father for the same trait. So by this way you inherited gene for color of eye from mother, and also gene for color of eye from mother. So by this way inside your body or inside your cell there are what? There are two genes for what? For the same traits, which is what? For example, which is color of eyes, but one gene from mother and other gene from father. So by this way the trait of color of eye consists from what? Consists from two genes. Why two genes? Gene from mother, gene from father. Okay, the same idea if you inherited what? Color of skin, for example, also you inherited this trait also from what? From mother and father. By what? Or as a form of what? As a form of gene. So also you inherited what? Gene for color of skin from mother, and other gene for color of skin from what? From your father. So inside each cell of your body there are what? There are two genes for the color of skin. So each trait inside your body consists from what? Consists from two genes. Why two genes? Gene from mother and gene from father. But question now, any trait which appear in your body, trait of father or trait of mother. For example, if we imagine the color of eye of your father is green, while the color of eye of your mother is brown. Okay, type. Now you inherited green color of eye from father and brown color of eye from mother, as a form of what? As a form of gene. Type. Any trait will appear in your body, like father green color or like mother brown color. Okay, the trait which appear in your body depends on what? Depends on the type of gene which form this trait. The type of gene which form this trait. We said before, any trait in your body consists from what? Consists from two genes, gene from mother and gene from father. Okay, and the trait which appear in your body according or depends on what? The type of gene which form this trait. I mean what? By this I mean we have two types of genes. What about the type of genes? Dominant gene and recessive gene. What's the difference between them? We have two types of gene, dominant gene and recessive gene. What's the difference between them? Dominant gene, this gene is strongest, or which appear in the most people, or which appear in the most person in offspring. I mean what? If we take ratio the brown of color of eye a person, anyone more, the blue color or the brown color? Sure, the brown color. Okay, the person which the human which has the brown color is more than what? More than the blue color. The same idea if we make comparison between the black hair and the brown hair. Okay, anyone more black or brown? Of course black. So the trait which appear is the most of human, this trait or this gene called what? Called dominant. But the trait or gene which appear but in few ratio or less ratio, this is what? This is recessive trait or recessive gene. Like what? Like green color of eye, blue color of eye, like white skin, like smooth hair, like light color of hair, and so on. Okay, so the dominant gene which appear in most or in by more ratio. Okay, but recessive gene these appear by less ratio. Okay, so we say again the trait, any trait consists from two genes, and we have two types of genes, dominant gene and recessive gene, and any type of gene which appear by more ratio is dominant, but recessive no, by less ratio. Okay, or in certain cases. So by this way we have many cases, or we have three cases. What about of them? Maybe the two genes which form my trait, the both of them dominant, or maybe the two genes which form my traits, both of them what? Maybe both of them recessive, or maybe one dominant and one recessive. How one dominant and how recessive? For example, if we imagine the mother and the father, the both of them color of eye brown, so the brown is what? Is appear in by more ratio, so the brown color, do you think dominant trait or recessive trait? No, brown color is what? Is dominant trait. So by this way, if mother and father, the both of them brown color, so my trait now consists from what? Consists from two dominant gene from mother and dominant gene from father. Okay, type. If for example the mother and father, the both of them green or blue color, and we know the colored eye of colored eye trait is what? Is recessive. Okay, so by this way mother and father, the both of them recessive, so my trait in this case consists from what? Consists from two recessive gene, one mother and one father. Type. If mother for example brown but father is green, so by this way what happened? In this case we have two different trait, dominant and recessive. So my trait now consists from what? Consists from dominant gene and consists from what? Recessive gene. Okay, so by this way we have many cases. What about of them? Maybe the two genes which form my traits, maybe both of them dominant. Okay, يعني I heard what? Dominant gene from mother and dominant gene from father. So do you think the trait becomes what? Sure طبعا the trait becomes dominant, not recessive, because there is no any recessive gene. Okay, and the second case maybe the I inherited recessive gene from mother and recessive gene from father. So in this case my traits also becomes what? Becomes recessive. Sure. Why? Because there is no dominant. Of course becomes what? Becomes recessive. And the third case may be dominant gene from mother or father, whatever, and the other gene recessive, يعني different genes. Okay, so in this case do you think anyone overcomes the other, dominant or recessive? No, in this case dominant trait will appear. Why? Because we said the dominant gene its a trait appear by more ratio, okay, or strongest gene. Okay, so if the two genes which form my trait dominant, the trait becomes dominant. If the both of them recessive, the my trait becomes recessive. If one of them dominant and the other recessive, by this way becomes what? Becomes dominant. Okay, type. If we observe these traits, we will observe very important point. What about of them? Maybe my trait consists from what? Consists from similar gene. How similar gene? Like first case. In the first case, what? My dominant trait consists from what? Consists from dominant gene and also dominant gene. So by this way, this similar or different gene. Of course, this similar. And also in recessive. In recessive trait also consists from what? Consists from recessive and recessive. So also similar. Okay. So maybe my traits consists from what? Similar gene. Similar gene, whatever, dominant or recessive. In this case, this individual or this trait called what? Called pure. Why called pure? Because the genes which form this trait what? Similar, are similar, whatever, both of them dominant or both of them recessive. In other case, maybe my trait consists from what? Different gene. Different gene have dominant and recessive, and of course this trait becomes what? Becomes dominant. But in this case, this individual called what? Called hybrid. يبقى what's the meaning of hybrid? Individual hybrid يعني this trait consists from what? Different gene, not similar, which are dominant and recessive. So if we make revision again, يبقى by this way any traits in my body consists from what? Consists from two genes. Any trait consists from two genes, gene from mother and gene from father. And also we have two types of gene, dominant gene and recessive gene. So we have three cases. Maybe this trait consists from two dominant gene, so in this case my trait becomes dominant. Maybe two recessive gene, so my trait becomes recessive. Or maybe dominant and recessive, so my trait becomes what? Dominant. So by this way we have two individual, maybe pure, maybe hybrid. What's different between them? Pure يعني their traits consist from what? Similar gene, similar gene, two dominant or two recessive. طب hybrid يعني different gene, one dominant and one recessive. So also we can say the pure trait is what? Is similar or homozygous. What's the meaning of homozygous? يعني similar gene. Okay. طب what about of hybrid? We know hybrid is different, so we can say it is what? Is heterozygous. What's the meaning of heterozygous? Heterozygous يعني different. Okay, different. Okay, so dominant trait maybe becomes pure or maybe becomes hybrid. Why? Because the dominant trait maybe consisted from two dominant gene and two similar gene, so in this case becomes pure. Or maybe also dominant trait consists from what? From dominant gene and recessive gene, so in this case similar or different? Of course different, so becomes hybrid. But dominant trait, we have two cases of dominant trait, maybe pure, maybe hybrid. If consists from two dominant gene becomes pure. If consists from dominant and recessive, so different gene, so becomes hybrid. But what about of recessive trait? Recessive trait forever pure only. Recessive trait forever becomes what? Pure only. Why recessive pure only? Why there is no hybrid recessive? Why the recessive is only pure? because recessive trait consists from what? Consists from two recessive. Do you think maybe recessive trait consists from recessive and dominant? Of course no. Why? Because if recessive collect with dominant trait, dominant gene in the same trait, so in this case any gene overcomes the other by its gene, of course dominant, right? So becomes dominant trait. So recessive trait forever consists from what? Two recessive gene. So forever becomes what? Becomes pure, not hybrid. يبقى dominant may be pure, may be hybrid. طبعا recessive is forever pure. طب what about of the opposites? What about of the pure individual? No, pure may be dominant, may be recessive. يبقى if we have pure individual, this pure individual may be his trait dominant, يعني two dominant traits, or may be recessive. طب what about if we have hybrid individual? Hybrid individual يبقى of course all traits dominant. Why all traits dominant? You know hybrid يعني consists from what? From different gene, dominant and recessive. So hybrid forever dominant, and pure may be dominant and may be recessive. Okay, so by this way the genetic traits, like we said before, two types, dominant trait and recessive trait. طيب remember me, dominant trait may be what? May be pure only, hybrid only, the both of them? No, both of them. If dominant trait consists from two similar gene becomes pure. If consists from dominant and recessive يعني different يبقى becomes what? Becomes hybrid. طب what about of recessive trait? Recessive trait formed from what? Formed from two different gene, one of them dominant and the other recessive. So the dominant trait forever is what? Is pure only. Okay, today now we'll study some example of traits found in human body to know anyone dominant and anyone recessive. Okay, طيب we'll start together by what? By hair. We know we have two types of hair, may be smooth and may be curly. طيب do you think anyone dominant and anyone recessive? Of course curly hair found by more ratio, more than smooth hair. So the curly hair dominant but smooth hair recessive. Okay, طب anyone found by more ratio, the black hair or colored hair or light color like light brown? Of course black hair. So also black hair is dominant, like we said before, the dominant trait which found by more amount or more ratio. Okay, so the curly hair and black hair, both of them are dominant, but recessive traits in here is what? Smooth hair and light color. Okay, طيب what about of eye? We have two types of eye, maybe wide, maybe narrow, but wide eye is dominant, but narrow eye is what? Is recessive. Okay, طيب trait number 3, dimple. We know dimples which appear in face. Okay, the presence of dimples is recessive, but there is the presence of dimple is dominant, but absent of this trait is what? Is recessive. Okay, type trait number 4, which is called what? Freckles. Freckles like sunspot which found in face or skin of body. Okay, if there is no this trait in face, this dominant, but in the presence of the trait is what? Is recessive. Okay, طيب what else? The other traits found in human? Tongue. There are some people have ability to what? To roll tongue. Okay, if you have this ability, this dominant. Okay, but if you can't roll your tongue still straight, you can't, or you have no any ability to roll this tongue, this recessive. Okay, the what about of ear loop? If ear loop free ear loop from what? From the remain face, this dominant. Okay, but if ear loop is attached with what? Attached with face, like image by this way, attached, this called what? This recessive. Okay, The last trait which found in human, which is what color of eye. Of course طبعا the traits which found by more amount is what is black eye, so is what is dominant. But the colored eye, whatever green, light brown, blue and so on, okay, colored eye is what is recessive because it found but by less ratio. Okay, so by this way we'll studied some traits in human, dominant and recessive. In hair, curly and black hair, dominant, okay, and in eye, wide eye and black eye also dominant. In ear, free earlobe is dominant but attached is recessive. The ability to roll your tongue, this is dominant, but if you have no any ability to roll your tongue, this is recessive. Okay, if if there is dimple found in your face, this is also dominant, but if there is no, this is recessive. The first founder of hereditary, or the first scientist which discovered the basis of genetics, called what? Called Gregor Mendel. Okay, Gregor Mendel is the first scientist which discovered genes which responsible for transfer the trait from generation to another, and the first one discovered the types of gene, whatever is a dominant or recessive, and also types of individual pure and hybrid. Okay, Gregor Mendel made many experiments. All these experiments done on only one living organism. Okay, this living organism which is what? Which is bee plant. Why bee plant? Okay, why bee plant? Because many reasons, due to many reasons. Okay, we'll study all these reasons in other time by all details. Okay, طيب now we must know what about of the most important trait in bee plant, and what about of the dominant and recessive trait in bee plant. There are many traits of the pea plant. The first one, which is what? Seed shape. Okay, of course all of us know this is a pea plant, okay, and also know the shape of seed plant. Maybe this seed maybe becomes smooth or maybe wrinkled like this shape, not the same surface. But what about of seed color? Seed color, like we know there are two types of colors of seed plant, maybe yellow and maybe green. Okay, anyone found by more ratio yellow color or green color? Of course yellow color, like smooth and wrinkled. No, smooth is dominant but wrinkled is recessive. So what about of the color of fruit? Color of fruit also maybe green and yellow, but in this case opposite, the seed color is the seed color, yellow color dominant. Okay, but in the fruit color, green color is what? Green color is dominant. Okay, so what about of the color of the flower? Maybe flower is red or maybe white. Red dominant but white is recessive. So what about of position of flower? Maybe the flower position becomes side. What's the meaning of side? Yani get out from the side of the branch of the plant. Okay, but what about of the end position of the flower? End, yani get out from the top of the branches of the plant. So by this way, in this position stop the growing of the plant, but in the first position side, the plant is still in growing. Okay, anyone dominant? Dominant is what? Dominant is side position, but recessive is end. Last trait, stem height, maybe tall, maybe short. Short طبعا tall dominant, but short is recessive. Okay, so by this way we studied the most important traits which found in pea plant, and also we studied any one of them dominant and any one of them trait. If we make a summary for this period, we studied what any traits found in generation or parents may be transferred to generation. How? By what? By gametes. What about of gametes? Sperm or ova. Okay, طيب as a form of what? As a form of gene. So each trait found in your body transfer from generation to another as a form of gene. Gene for blood group, gene for color of hair, type of hair, curly or smooth, color of skin, and so on. Okay, and also there are two types of gene, if you remember what and what, dominant and recessive. Okay, if the both of dominant collected together, so by this way we obtain dominant trait. If two recessive collected together, so by this way we have recessive trait. If one dominant and the other recessive, so any gene overcome by its trait on the other, and any other hidden has no any ability to appear its trait, of course recessive. So if dominant and recessive gene collected together, so this trait becomes what? Becomes dominant. So by this way we have two types of individual, pure and hybrid. Pure if two traits are similar, whatever dominant or recessive. Okay, and the other individual, hybrid. Hybrid means what? And it's all traits consists from what? Different genes. Sure طبعا of course forever becomes what? Becomes dominant. And also we studied the most important traits in human and also in pea plant, and we know any traits from them, dominant and recessive. Okay, طيب what about of experiment of Mendel, or what about of results of Mendel, or what about of the first and second law of Mendel? All of these points we will study them by all details in next session or next period, in God willing. Thank you for watching and goodbye. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.